Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of Hunting Matters, brought to you by the Houston Safari Club Foundation. Thank you so much for joining us again this week. And our guest this week is a gentleman I know absolutely nothing about, so I'm excited to talk to him. It's Tanner Tripp, who's the founder of Wild Giants Conservation Fund and Wild Giants Caucasus. Is that how you say it, Tanner?
That's right.
Cool. Got it. What's that map behind you on the wall?
Yeah, that's the map of the Caucasus. So
Okay.
it's Russia, Georgia, Azerbaijan, Armenia, parts of Turkey, and parts of Iran.
Places I've never been before, so I'm interested to talk to you about that. Before we get started, and we're going to revisit this later, if you want to check out Tanner's website, it's wildgiants.org. That's wildgiants.org. And of course, he has an Instagram and YouTube channel that you can find off of that as well. So Tanner, for people who are just discovering you, like myself, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, and what were what was your early career days like before you got into doing what you do now?
Yeah, absolutely. I grew up in Minnesota and spent a lot of my time outdoors, hunting, fishing, camping. Very passionate about that. Growing up, my dream was to move out to Alaska and be a hunting and fishing guide is all I wanted to do. And when I went to school, to college, I studied global studies. And part of that was I got to do a semester-long internship overseas. And so I spent 7 months in Papua New Guinea, which is actually where I met my wife.
Wow.
And yeah, so she also had a huge passion for traveling. And we, coming out of college, got a job with a travel company and lived in Amsterdam for 6 years, working for the travel company, doing some humanitarian work, and doing a lot of traveling over there.
That's cool, man. You've done a lot of cool stuff in your young life. How did you pick New Guinea, or did somebody else pick that for you?
That was there were a few options on the table, and one of my best friends had gone on that internship the year before. And so, man, just out in the jungle and fishing out in the ocean with cast nets and fishing on the reefs and all, I mean, it was an adventure.
That's crazy. That's crazy. And then you ended up in Amsterdam for several years, and you were in the travel and tourism industry. How'd you like living over there?
Really great parts and really hard parts. For somebody who loves open spaces, and I love people, I really do, but I also like getting away from everybody and getting out into nature, into the wilderness. And so living in a place like the Netherlands had its challenges because it's an incredibly dense country.
Mm-hmm.
But there's so many places you can travel in Europe. I mean, two of my favorites were Iceland and Slovenia that we got to go to a couple times, and you're just an hour flight away. So it has its benefits as well.
So you back in Minnesota now, or where are you living now?
Yep. Yeah, we moved back here about a year and a half when we started this organization.
Okay.
And our plan is to move back overseas to run this organization in the Republic of Georgia.
Got it. And you have a young family. You've started a family now.
Yeah. So we had our first. Riley was born in Amsterdam. She's 4 years old, and then Sawyer is 2.
What an incredible opportunity for your kids to see the world. You know, there's a lot of people who never even leave their hometowns. And I think that's great that you and your wife have made that decision that, you know, they're going to get to see the world and travel as well. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. We made a decision early on that, of course, it's harder. Of course, there's a lot of extra challenges. But once you take that first step and do it a couple times, we just decided we're not going to stop doing these things because it's a little bit harder. So yeah, they've been able to come along on a lot of cool adventures.
Well, you guys are world travelers now. You kind of know the ropes, and just imagine what they'll be like when they're 18 years old. They're like, oh yeah,
I know.
Live there. And that's incredible. So for listeners, tell us a little bit about exactly what Wild Giants Conservation Fund and what Wild Giants Caucasus is.
Yeah. So there are two organizations, partner organizations. Okay. The Wild Giants Conservation Fund is 501c3 organization based here in the U.S. And then Wild Giants Caucasus is the more the operational arm of the organization. That's registered nonprofit in the Republic of Georgia to carry out a lot of the conservation and rewilding work that we'll do.
Okay. And what was it that you saw? Because most people, they do things because they identify an issue or problem or a way they can fix it, make it better. What is it that you saw in modern conservation that led you to found Wild Giants?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I get a lot of times people are like, how did you decide to go there and do this thing? And having the opportunity to travel a lot of places, we lived in Turkey for a few months and absolutely loved it. It's one of my favorite places we'd ever been. And that was until we traveled to the Caucasus. And absolutely just people ask, why Georgia? Why Azerbaijan? And it's like, most of those people have never been there or never heard of them. It's just one of the most beautiful places in the world, amazing culture. And we really fell in love with it. But as beautiful as it is, you have mountain peaks up to 18,000 feet. You have huge forests and deserts. And, historically, it was home to the Caucasian lion, the Caspian tiger. It has hyenas there. It has the Persian leopard there. It has wolves, bears. It's just an amazing area. But after the Soviet collapse and in the last days of the Soviet Union, a lot of the wildlife just got wiped out to where today several species have been completely wiped out and are extinct now. Several are just gone from the Caucasus. And then the ones that are remaining are just, the numbers are so low. And so there's just this really cool opportunity to take these two passions I have for people and for wildlife and to bring them together and make a real difference. We're not calling ourselves a conservation organization is a little bit of a misnomer because there's very little left to conserve. Ideally, you would say we're going to keep our hands off as much as possible and kind of let it do its thing. But when all the animals are gone, we have to take a more proactive approach. And so seeing the programs and the success that's happened in South Africa in bolstering the numbers of a lot of their wildlife, and now it's happening in Texas as well, we can take that model and just take it one step further and say, we're gonna breed these animals, we're gonna grow these numbers in captivity, but ultimately that's a means to an end to rewild and put them back in the wild where they belong. And
you mentioned that parallel can be drawn to the same effects that the Rhodesian War had, in Africa and all these other civil wars have had, where they just have gone in, and when the government's unstable, they just wipe out entire areas of animals because there's no regulation or control, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we got to go to this. We were looking for land in Georgia, and we went to this really old Soviet era hunting lodge right up on the foothills of the Greater Caucasus, and it was just pictures all over the lodge of these these Soviet aristocrats or whatever, like 5 of them with their guns standing there, and 200 tur or 100 red deer just dead in front of them. They would go up in the helicopters and just shoot everything.
Wow. So that wasn't that long ago, but that's pretty incredible.
Capital Farm Credit understands that there's something about the outdoors that pulls you in. Could be the fresh air, the colors, the smells, the animals, the freedom. It's all just a part of who you are. And with our recreational land loans, you can purchase land for whatever outdoor pursuit you please. That way, the outdoors won't just be in your soul, it'll also be in your name. To learn more, visit capitalfarmcredit.com. Together, we're better.
So you guys are focused on what they call keystone species and restoring keystone species. What are keystone species? What animals are we talking about, and why is restoration of those so critical?
Yeah. Well, these are the species that allow, if you can protect these keystone species, it protects a lot of the other things underneath them. So we could talk about the Persian leopard. There's between 40 and 60 estimated left in the Caucasus. Not that many more left worldwide. The Bezoar ibex is their number one natural prey source.
Okay.
When all the Bezoar ibex are gone, when all the tur are gone, when all the Armenian mouflon are gone, they start hunting livestock, shepherds and sheep and goats, and the shepherds naturally stop that and kill them and poach them. And so we want to bring back these keystone, these foundational animals to the ecosystem. Bezoar ibex, Caucasian tur, the West Caucasian tur, it's endemic to the area, so it's not found anywhere else but the Greater Caucasus. And all but 25 of the entire world population lives on a tiny little mountain range in Russia. There's only 12 left in Georgia. And so this is an animal that's right on the edge. And so bringing these animals back has a cascading effect. And you can't talk about bringing them back without talking about how are we going to solve the problem that got them there in the first place. And so bringing these animals back, the only way you can do that is by incentivizing these local impoverished communities to want to protect them and stop poaching them. They need to benefit more from them being alive than from poaching them. And that ultimately is through hunting. It's the only model that works in the world. And so the first step is creating source herds and breeding and getting the numbers up, period. But eventually we're working with the wildlife agency to be able to start getting some limited permits and tags to start hunting in the coming years.
So you guys are not only going to be breeding and supplementing these herds and bringing these species back, but also you're going to be working on hunting of them, because we've talked about this on this program before. If something becomes a commodity or it doesn't have any value, then it has no value, and people don't see any reason to invest in it or to not poach it or that sort of thing. So are you finding that working with the government and agencies is positive? Are you getting pushback? And if so, how are you overcoming that?
It depends on the department. So we've been blessed to get really high connections up in the Department of Agriculture, under which you have forestry, you have protected areas and parks, you have the wildlife agency. And the group that we're working the closest with right now is the wildlife agency. They're very much kindred spirits. That they get it. They want to see sustainable hunting come back to their country. They want to bring in foreigners and show the beauty of their country. But you're working uphill in a lot of cases. And so the first big hurdle is to change the legislation that says any animal on the red list can't be hunted. 20 years ago, they put everything on the red list. So you have 6,500 East Caucasian tur in this tiny little country of Georgia, more than enough to start hunting, but you still can't legally hunt them. And so working with the government overall has been they've been phenomenal so far. And we hope that continues.
How does hunting work? Not being familiar with that, how does hunting work over there? Is it when you hunt, do you have to get a tag permit? Is it seasonal? How does it work over there?
The way it currently works is there are 12 registered hunting farms in the country, and these aren't these are open parks, but only 3 of them have any animals on them right now. So the other 9 nothing's happening on them, and the 3 that are active right now, the only things you can hunt are golden jackals, which are out of control. You can hunt those anywhere. They're a big problem there. And then pheasants in a couple of them, and wild boar, I think, in one of them. So currently the way that it works is you put a bid into the government, and you get a parcel of land that you want to manage, and you have strict criteria to manage it. And once you show that you have animals there, then you can start getting permission to hunt certain numbers of them. But as I understand, until that red list law changes, even if you had a whole bunch of red deer on your property, for example, you still couldn't hunt them.
Wow.
Yeah.
Hunting Matters is presented by Copandero Indoor Archery Pistol and Rifle Range, your premier indoor archery pistol and rifle shooting destination. Located in Oak Ridge North, right next to the Woodlands, Copandero offers 2 25-yard pistol ranges, a 100-yard rifle range, and a 25-yard archery range. Whether you're honing your skills or just starting, Copandero has everything you need, including rentals, classes, a retail store, an in-house cafe, and a VIP lounge. Join Copandero today for an unmatched shooting experience. To learn more, go to copandero.com. So before Wild Giants, you talked about living in Amsterdam, working in adventure travel and tourism. How did that experience shape, or did it shape anything in your brain about conservation and sustainability? Were you seeing things over there, or was this all just kind of a whole new concept for you that you've been thinking about the whole time?
Yeah, the seed for this was definitely planted during my time there, and probably before, but it really grew there because there are really successful areas in Europe where it is wild, and they have done amazing work. But then there are a lot of places that, either because the animals are gone or just because it's been so developed and manicured that it doesn't feel wild. And traveling through Iceland and not seeing any animals whatsoever, or other places like that, that it just put this idea of me, how do we bring that feeling of a wild place back? And when the animals aren't there, to me at least, it didn't feel wild. And so when I came to Georgia and Azerbaijan and saw this, it was like, man, we got to do something about this. This is what we have. These animals, they're here. They're not in other places. And if we don't do something now, it's only going to get worse. Nobody's doing any work there. Very little is being done in that part of the world.
Yeah.
And so taking what we've learned, in the West and here in the US, I mean, it's amazing. It's an amazing model. Out West, there's great populations of a lot of the big game animals. And we can take some of those things we've learned and apply it in Central Asia and the Caucasus.
Just something just popped in my head. Do you speak foreign languages?
I speak Dutch. I've just started Russian. My wife is learning Azerbaijani right now. Yeah.
Where do you learn that? Is that what is that? Loretta Stone or whatever? I mean, how is she learning that?
She is the most gifted language learner I've ever met. She has a tutor in Baku, the capital, that she meets with once a week. She's been doing it for about 3 months.
Oh, wow.
And she's already like speaking. I mean, it's amazing. Just that once a week, raising 2 kids, Yeah. Yeah, it's impressive.
So your kids are going to grow up multilingual.
They are, yeah. Yeah. Even Riley was 3 and she was already speaking a lot of Dutch phrases. I mean, it was crazy.
That's cool. That's very cool. Some people and in some parts of the world, they see conservation and tourism as competing forces. When you talk about, I'm sure you've heard of this living in this world, oh, well, you shouldn't hunt animals in Africa. Let's just do photo safaris. But we know photo safaris don't pay the bills. The income that people realize from photo safaris, look, I like a camera. I like to be behind the camera. I love to take photos, but it's just not going to bring the revenue needed to sustain species and as well as habitat. Do you see conservation and tourism in the areas of the world that you're going to be or that you are working in as competing factors?
Well, maybe in some hyper-realized utopia where we can live in this idealistic frame of mind. I mean, I get it from an emotional standpoint. People don't understand. Every single time I talk to a non-hunter about, we're doing this program, but ultimately we're going to be hoping and working towards hunting. They think, well, you want to just save the animals just to kill them, but you can't have one without the other. It just doesn't work. You get to this point. And so in conservation, we talk about balancing the benefit of the individual animal and the benefit of the species. Well, you could say, oh, it's not very good for that individual animal to be hunted. And okay, fair, even though it's probably the quickest and cleanest death it could ever have. But without hunting in a lot of these places, that animal would have never existed. Its parents or grandparents, it would have been poached and it wouldn't have ever been there. So without hunting, people don't have the incentive to protect. If we can set up a community fund where we're selling permits or facilitating sale of permits, and 70% of that revenue is going to an impoverished community, they're going to become the biggest stewards and protectors of the animals. And so you can't have one without the other.
Right. I'm just curious, how are you guys going to balance operating, both of these organizations so geographically so far apart?
Yeah. So we will, like I mentioned, we'll be living in Georgia, and that's where the majority of the work will be done. The U.S. side will do have a lot of the oversight, a lot of the fundraising, and a lot of the policy, making and things like that. And as we expand to other locations, but the majority of the work is going to happen on the ground there in Georgia. And you asked a few minutes ago, what did you see in the conservation world that got you fired up to do this? One of the biggest problems I saw is the model of funding for conservation work coming 100% from philanthropy or grants or things like that. It lends itself to organizations slipping into becoming fundraising organizations, not mission organizations.
Right.
Where seeing concrete impact on the ground slowly transitions into raising awareness. And we wanted to say from the beginning, yes, we're fundraising to raise the money to launch and build the breeding center and import the animals. But we're building alongside that an ecotourism operation with camping and glamping and cabins, fly fishing, horseback riding in the mountains, really unique adventure tourism things alongside the breeding center, which will actually, before too long, fund the entire operation there in Georgia, ultimately leading to sustainable hunting.
Are you looking for an investment that goes beyond the ordinary? Wildlife Partners is the nation's leader in breeding and consulting for the exotic wildlife industry. When you invest in wildlife, you're not just acquiring a 100% tax-deductible asset, you're playing a vital role in the conservation of endangered species. Do you own land? You can turn your ranch into a profitable wildlife-driven business. And even if you don't own land, that's no problem. Wildlife Partners offers unique opportunities for non-landowners to invest in conservation while enjoying significant tax benefits and potential cash flow. So that is that's the unique way you guys are going to get your message out there about what you're doing and why it's important, correct?
Yeah. So the really cool part, Georgia's a huge tourism hub. So there's people coming from all over the world, Europe, Israel, India, the US. And so these two things are going to support each other. People are going to come for the cool experience, but it's a cool experience that's funding something really, really important, doing a really, really good work. And so they're going to lend themselves to each other.
What else are you guys going to do? I mean, are you going to publish articles? You're going to publish papers? What else are you guys going to do to podcast appearances, of course? What else are you planning to do to draw awareness to your efforts?
Well, Joe, this is one of the really cool things. I think back to some of the really storied conservation organizations that have been doing amazing work here in the States for a long time. And what we have the opportunity to do is go right at the beginning and say, we're going to share this story. We're going to document this story. And so we're going to be active on social media, on YouTube, as we build this. This is something that nobody's really done.
Right.
And it's going to be a story that people can follow along and be part of and join in. It's a chance to use this age of social media and things like that to really champion a message that ultimately, yes, it's about the animals, but it's about the people just as much as the animals. And what's cool is that's a message that gets across the board. It's not just for hunters. That's for everybody. Everybody cares about these horrible situations that these people are in, the suicide rates that are through the roof, and the modern slavery that's happening in some of these communities. That's important stuff that we can make an impact on through wildlife.
Yeah, just driving awareness and visibility. You talked about working with the governments and the agencies and that sort of thing. How are you going to get buy-in from the local communities that you're working around?
And this is where my background in travel and studies do lend an advantage for myself, is people are people. And so you have to be able to speak to their human nature. And if you're coming and trying to take and just benefit yourself and make a lot of money or whatever, they're not going to buy in. You're going to be competing against them. But when they benefit from you being there through providing jobs and investment, setting up community funds, setting up scholarships, we want to have as much of our labor force from the local communities as possible. We want to pay for education for some of these skilled positions we're going to need. That really, they have anti-poaching legislation. They have penalties. If you shoot a red deer, it's like a $25,000 fine, US dollar fine, which is huge there.
Mm-hmm.
But when it's your uncle is the judge and you've poached the red deer, there's no enforcement.
Got it.
It all gets swept under the rug. But all of a sudden, when it's the whole community that's benefiting from these animals being there, that enforcement happens.
Hunting Matters is presented by DEA Ranch. Are you looking for the ultimate South Texas hunting experience? Then look no further than DEA Ranch. DEA Ranch offers some of the best whitetail and exotic game hunts in South Texas year-round. Whether you're looking to fill your freezer or put that next hunting memory on the wall, their professional guides are focused on ensuring each client has a memorable and exciting hunting experience. DEA Ranch offers guided hunts, professional staff, chef-prepared meals, trophy preparation, and more. To learn more, go to dearanch.com. That's dearanch.com.
So have you seen or read about the Kutata 11 project in Africa?
I've heard a little bit about it. Yeah, that
So,
was you had a guest that was talking about that.
yeah, we've had a couple of people, and Ivan Carter was of note, was involved with that early on, and the thing that always, and it kind of sounds like it sounds a lot like where you guys are heading, is that the one thing that they did is they met with the tribal chiefs, they met with the local communities, and what they did is they established areas where, okay, this is where we're going to help proliferate wild game species and herds and that sort of thing. But there's also going to be segmented areas that are just for agriculture. And
Mm,
I think the connection that they made that was really cool is they involve the local communities. The local communities get some of the game that's harvested. They're getting so many pounds of protein a week, as well as the fact that they are keeping elephants off of agricultural plots, and they're keeping allowing these people to keep some of the agriculture that is raised and harvested there, as well as training them how to be, anti-poaching patrols, how to be farmers, helping with water projects and all these things.
mm.
Where it sounds like similar to what you guys are doing and will continue to do as far as building whole communities around all your efforts.
Yeah. Yeah, that's 100% right. Ultimately, our job is to lift up and support what they want. I mean, I'm not a Georgian citizen. My job is to help and support in what ways I can. And ultimately, you hope you work yourself out of a job. There's a reason we're a nonprofit and not a for-profit hunting operation. Is because ultimately our chief end is common good and helping. Not to make a bunch of money. Now you need money to do it, and that's how you get to sustainability, and that's how you get the local buy-in. But ultimately, we're there to support the government and what they want, and to support these local communities so that they benefit more than anyone.
Yeah, and I think what you guys are doing is fantastic, and the fact that you're going to be driving awareness of these things, because just in talking to you in 25 minutes, I've learned that there are all these species there, or some of the species you mentioned. I had no clue that they were there or are still there. The stored animals are like, oh, the plight of the snow leopard in some areas of the world, and that sort of thing. I had no clue that there were leopards in your area over there. And so a big pillar, like you said before, of Wild Giants is your breeding and rewilding program. How does that work in practice? How are you guys going to, I mean, and I'm not asking you to divulge any trade secrets. Are you capturing animals and breeding them, or just kind of walk us through a little bit about how that procedure works?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a bit of an open book because, again, the more effort, the more awareness, the more involvement we get in this part of the world, the more benefit there is. So our process is we purchased 350 acres of land there last year, and we're negotiating on another 200 or so acres that's surrounded by government land, which will ultimately be available for lease. And we'll set up breeding facilities there for a couple of species to start as we get, it's a whole new way of operating. There's relevant experience from Texas and from South Africa, but ultimately this is a whole new ball game. Mm-hmm. And so we're starting with the Bezoar ibex because it's a very hardy species and it's got a really strong global population. We can source them from Iran, we can source them from Armenia, from Turkey, from Austria. We can also source them locally in partnership with the government. There's a keen effort to capture some of these wild animals and bring them into breeding centers to keep them from being poached. One of the biggest challenges that we're facing right now and we're working to get around is these animals, because there's so little knowledge about them, even getting a genetic profile for them and saying this is the exact sequence of what a pure West Caucasian tur is, or a pure Bezoar ibex, or a pure, whatever, Armenian mouflon, is really difficult. It doesn't really exist as far as our team has found. And so we're working with the zoo, the National Zoo there. We're working with the Wildlife Agency to get some of those tests done, to get samples and send them to labs so that we can compare. I'm really, really, it's really important to do it with excellence. So we don't want to bring in animals that are going to hybridize and create different genes and things like that. So it's a long game. It's a lot of work, but we're starting small and then scaling as we go.
And once the species and the herd start to proliferate, will you release them on the farms that you mentioned earlier? Is that kind of the plan, or into the wild, or what's the plan after that?
So the goal will be to get to a point of critical mass where the reproduction is slow to start, but you get to a point where it really ramps up. It's exponential. And so the goal is to hold on as long as possible to let that herd grow as much as possible. And then there's a couple strategic places for reintroductions. We'll just talk about the Bezoar ibex. There's roughly 300 to 400 left in the country, but they're in these tiny little pockets up in the mountains. And so they've been inbreeding, and there's no corridors connecting them. So one of the first jobs is to release just limited numbers to bring some genetic diversity to those animals. But then we're working alongside the Wildlife Agency as well to create a sustainable source herd in one of the big national parks there in central Georgia. So that's where the Bezoar ibex would be released in the early stages. That's where the Caspian red deer would be released. The Caucasian tur probably wouldn't be. It'd be released somewhere else. So each one will be a little bit unique.
Yeah. Do you hire and employ biologists? Do you work with local or government officials as from a biology and geneticist standpoint and all those sorts of things? How does that team work?
Yeah, so it's a mix of foreign experts, consultants, folks from South Africa, and then we're working alongside, as I mentioned, the Tbilisi Zoo, and so there's a couple of vets there that we're working alongside, which gets really important when you think about what are the local diseases and what do we need to guard against when we're bringing in animals and things like that. So we're definitely in the early stages and growing, but the groundwork has been laid. Our big push right now is the funding to build the first breeding pens and import the first ibex. Everything is lined up to do that. We're just working on the funding for it at this point.
Nobody wants to imagine an emergency on a hunting trip, but when the unexpected happens, you want the team of medical and security experts at Global Rescue to be there for you. Global Rescue Operations Centers are staffed by experienced personnel, and you'll always speak to an expert on the first call. Global Rescue provides unparalleled capabilities to transport members to the hospital of their choice, not just the closest. So trade what-ifs for peace of mind with convenient travel services designed for the unexpected. Learn more at globalrescue.com/hunting matters. Do you think you guys will face any challenges like we've seen in the U.S. With bighorn sheep and domestic sheep and transmission of diseases and things like that? Is that an issue or a possible obstacle for you guys over there?
Well, that is one of the biggest. So poaching and habitat loss, but then it's a very nomadic culture for a lot of the shepherds. They go up into the high mountains during the summer for the summer pastures and grazing, and there is a lot of that disease transmission, which has hurt the population significantly. Mm. And that gets back to you have to go to the root cause of how we got here in the first place, and you have to provide alternatives for those people. I mean, that's their livelihood, and they're just more and more pushing out the local populations. All the shepherds carry a gun in the mountains and they shoot the wild animals they see.
Oh, wow.
So that's that, to answer your question though. Yeah, that is definitely something that we're gonna have to guard against pretty strongly.
It'd be very cool if you guys could get to a genetic strain of disease resistant animals depending on the species.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. There's a lot there. The science, and it's a really exciting time to be doing what we're doing.
So let's talk a little bit about how you're going to raise this money to do all this work, because it for lack of better grammar, it ain't cheap. Talk a little bit about your funding model, and why is it important to move beyond traditional perpetual fundraising you talked about before? I think that's one of the things Houston Safari Club Foundation really tries to guard against, is we don't want to be perceived as a fundraising organization. Our goal is to raise all the money we can to give it all away by the end of the year through conservation grants and scholarship. Our scholarship programs are kind of our trademark program, and youth education programs. So talk to us a little bit about your unique model.
Yeah, so it's building towards something that doesn't rely on fundraising for each location, because ultimately we have a big vision for this region. We want to be setting up breeding centers in Azerbaijan, in Iran at some point, Turkmenistan. There's a huge need across that region, and each one of those locations needs to be able to stand on its own feet. It's just, I've seen it happen too often where the need and the huge lift that comes with fundraising can just dominate what you're doing. And being here from Minnesota, there's a genuine skepticism towards nonprofits because of all the fraud and different things like that. There's a skepticism towards nonprofits that didn't exist 10 years ago, at least in my experience.
Right.
And so right now we have a couple of major approaches. We'll be doing some auctions here in 2026. We were out at SHOT Show, at Sheep Show. We'll be at Safari Club in Nashville here in a couple weeks, having some just amazing meetings with different manufacturers and PR groups and things like that to get the word out there and get awareness and kind of build the background for what we're doing. But the lion's share of the funding is likely going to come from individuals, as is the case with a lot of this kind of work. But what we're talking about is every dollar given at this point makes an outsized impact because we're very agile, we're nimble, we're very project on the ground, boots on the ground oriented. Every dollar is going to the ground. It's not going into a huge overhead expenses and things like that. And it's a chance to build a legacy, to build something really unique and leave something behind in a part of the world where really nothing's being done.
So the ultimate goal is, you've got to have startup and you've got to have funding along the way, but the ultimate goal is kind of to move it towards self-sustainability for the overall project.
That's right. Yeah. Until we get on the ground, we're employing the lean startup principles of having a minimum viable product and being agile and being able to adapt to what's working and move beyond what's not working. But our goal is within 5 years from launching the operations to be generating all the revenue we need to fund the whole operation there in Georgia.
Got it. So you're married, you have a young family, you guys are moving to a different part of the world. I'm just curious, I've never been there, so I've got to ask this question. Are you guys going to be out in the middle of nowhere? Are you going to be rural? Are you going to be near cities? And what's that adjustment going to be like?
It's pretty remote. We're about 40. It's a small country. The country is about the size of South Carolina, so you're never that remote, I guess. But we're about 40 minutes from the nearest town, which is where you could get groceries and stuff. And then there's about 40 or 50 really tiny little villages surrounding the property where we'll be at. So we'll be out there for sure.
Yeah, no Uber Eats.
No Uber Eats. No, not much around. We'll be, our first big lift is going to be roads on the land, electricity, digging wells, building the infrastructure, because again, there's just not a lot out there.
In the heart of nature, give your deer the nutrition they deserve with Record Rack deer feeds. The premium feeds support antler growth and overall herd health. Whether you're a wildlife enthusiast or a dedicated hunter, Record Rack deer feeds provide essential nutrients for a thriving herd. Choose Record Rack deer feeds for optimal deer nutrition. Visit recordrack.com to learn more.
Do you have the resources to do that? Are there people out there that can help you do that?
Yeah, so we've got, and that's what's exciting is we've got contractors lined up, we've got architects, we've got all the things in country ready to go. Everything we can do locally. One of the things we're doing for fundraising and for donors is commissioning some artwork of some of these really unique animals. We're working with an artist in Azerbaijan, in Baku, to draw the animals from their country. So everything we can do locally, we want to do, because that's just investing in that economy and those communities.
Okay. So you touched on it earlier, the ecotourism platform combined with, breeding center to fund the long-term model. I'm just curious to know kind of what your time frame is, because you're like you're saying, we're just getting this thing started. So when do you think that all the wheels will be turning to where it's a self-generating project? Is it a year, is it a 3-year or 5-year plan and then beyond, or kind of what's your time frame?
Yeah, great question. A lot of that depends on if I can be frank, how the fundraising goes. I've stopped talking about dates and started talking about dollars as trigger points to start doing things. My family's goal is to be moving within about a year, by the beginning of 2027. And before we move, we need to have the breeding center built, so at least 2 or 3 species on the property. We want to have the very basic bones to launch the ecotourism business, and we want to have funding to be able to sustain the operation for 26 and 27. So those are some big lifts. We're looking at about $2.8 million for everything we want to do in 2026. But when we get to that point, that's when we're on the ground and all systems are firing.
So do they have outfitters over there that have established businesses for hunting?
No, because there's no hunting.
No hunting. Yeah. So once you get to that point, a few years down the road, how are you going to walk that fine line? It's a constant challenge for anybody that hunts to talk to people who don't understand hunting. And I'm not talking about anti-hunting, the people who are just against it because it's wrong and that's bad. Hunting is bad. But what's your plan to walk that fine line between hunting and conveying that message and helping people understand and teach them that hunting is a conservation tool? We're running a conservation model here, but hunting eventually will be part of that practice.
I think it's important to make it really easy to understand for folks. We can get kind of in our own way sometimes, I think. There's some amazing programs happening in other parts of Central Asia, Tajikistan or Pakistan come to mind, where animals were critically low populations, but then limited hunting permits where they only hunt the old mature males that were past breeding age, would bring in a significant revenue for the community. And over 10 years, the populations just skyrocketed. It's a model that works. It's a model that's been established. And when you can draw clear parallels, the hunting revenue from shooting this one animal is going to fund us releasing 3 more or 5 more in its place. That's easy for people to understand how hunting directly facilitates more animals out in the wild.
Yeah. Are you looking for a smarter way to manage your document imaging and print environment? Dex Imaging delivers industry-leading printers, copiers, and fully managed print services designed to cut cost, boost productivity, and simplify your workflow. Whether you're a small business or a Fortune 500 company, Dex provides personalized local service with the power of a national network so you get fast, reliable support wherever you are. Dex gives back, proudly supporting organizations like Houston Safari Club Foundation by giving through profit sharing. Dex Imaging, smarter technology, exceptional service, proven results. Visit deximaging.com or email Adam Montgomery at adam.montgomery@deximaging.com. We had I've shared this story before. We were in a camp one time. We were at a place we were hunting that offered tourism and hunting. And we came in and we sat down for dinner. They did big group dinners every night in the dining room. And we had a lady that asked us, because we had camo, we came in late, and she was like, I don't understand how you guys can shoot animals. And one of the guys that was with us actually said, you know what? He said, do you contribute to your local humane society? She goes, oh yeah, every month we give something, And he explained to her how if she went out and bought a hunting license, she could do more for wildlife conservation than giving $11 a month to this organization just by buying a hunting license. Kind of that same analogy that you're using to showing the value of hunting and conservation and habitat management, wildlife population management. And she left there. She goes, I'm going to go buy a hunting license tomorrow. I will never use it, but I'm going to buy a hunting license. It's education's the key. Education and communication is always key, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Again, because on the surface level, it's not intuitive. If you don't look at it that closely, it's like, okay, you want to shoot the animals to save them. And we came across that so often in Europe and in Amsterdam, especially, very strong anti-hunting sentiment. But, and this is a well understood concept for hunters, but most of the people who are criticizing me for hunting, we'll talk about in Amsterdam, they're not vegetarians, they're not vegans.
Right.
They eat meat. They just want someone else to kill it. And by the way, that animal lived in horrible conditions compared to what a free-ranging wild animal lived in. And it's full of chemicals and things like that. And so when you can kind of just draw attention to some of those really easy points, like it's low-hanging fruit to bring that education.
Yeah. And I think your earlier point about community involvement, getting the buy-in of the local community, of course, you got to deal with the government, you got to deal with the agencies and that sort of thing. But I think that getting that local community buy-in is so important. What are some of the things, that you guys are going to be doing to get jobs going and get local community buy-in, that sort of thing? Can you dive into that a little bit deeper? I mean, are they going to be there? Are they going to be there helping calving animals and that sort of thing? And
yeah. So when you say local community, And that also gets to the nuance of it. It's local community to where you are. That's what's local, obviously.
Sure.
So the breeding center where we'll have the ecotourism operation, it's on this amazing river gorge, this steep bluffs. I mean, it's just picturesque. It's amazing. There'll be lots of jobs there for hospitality type things and cook. We hope to start a cafe there, and there'll be wildlife keepers and anti-poaching, and there'll be a lot of jobs provided to this really tiny community that's going to really change the area for a lot of people. But then when you talk about securing community buy-in in the mountains where you're releasing the animals, well, that's a different tactic. You're not providing, those people don't benefit from the jobs you're providing hundreds of miles away. And so that's where you have to work alongside the government. It has to be a holistic solution. If we can't establish sustainable hunting, it's going to be difficult. I'm not going to say it's impossible, because they do have some protected areas with some staffing of rangers and things, but it's going to be really difficult to rewild animals and have them actually grow and not be poached down. So it's an all-in approach. And what's exciting is we're not doing this on our own. We're not coming in and saying, hey, this is what you guys need to do. They already recognize this is what we need to do. It just doesn't work otherwise. And so if anything, what we're talking about offering just strengthens their position as they try to get some of this legislation passed.
Gunworks just launched a new rifle system. It's called Index. It's sized for adventure and engineered for extremes. With barrel lengths as short as 16 inches and a folding stock that collapses to an ultra-short profile, the Gunworks Index fits nicely in a UTV, a float plane, or across the seat of your truck without sacrificing accuracy. The Index features a built-in ARCA and pick rail for use on tripod or bipod, and a night vision rail to ensure you're ready for any scenario. The Gunworks Index delivers magnum capability in the most compact chassis rifle system on the market. Visit gunworks.com to learn more.
You talk about that population of herders that rely on sheep herds or whatever animal that they're farming as their lifeblood, their lifeline. What's your plan for getting them to help and showing them the value of it? Because that's to me, that's far removed. You're talking about animals, or you're talking about populations hundreds of miles away. You're breeding them, and you're like, hey guys, stop shooting all these animals when you're walking through the mountains with your herds.
Right.
And they're going to be like, why?
Yeah. So I won't pretend that that's a simple question. People have been asking that question across the world for a long time. How do you can't just take away their livelihood.
Yeah.
It just won't work. So what they've done is, in some of these protected areas, which is what they kind of call their national parks, they've already started to section off areas where they can no longer come in and they have to go to other grazing areas to try to create some sanctuaries for these animals. And so it's going to be a combination of that, of not just telling them, okay, you're out of luck, but finding those areas where they can expand from, and then gradually providing other means of employment and livelihoods. The country is developing. They were recently trying to become part of the EU. And so over the next, when you think about 20 or 30 years, which is really what you're talking about, you're not going to change anything overnight. There's a real hope that they can transform a lot of that, over the long term.
Yeah. Do you Wild Giants has sometimes been described as a scalable model. How do you scale this model of conservation? Is it obviously you guys have a lot of work ahead of you where you are now. Do you think 15, 20 years from now, you'd be looking at other parts of the world to operate in?
Well, yes. Well, certainly other parts of Central Asia. Our goal would be to launch within the first 5 to 10 years a second location. Fingers crossed, we hope to launch a wildlife reserve. Both the Georgian and Azerbaijani governments have been amenable to the idea of setting up a large 20, 30,000 acre hunting reserve. Ultimately, there's a specific part of Georgia where that could really, really happen. When you talk about scaling it, there's benefits to being in that part of the world, and there's drawbacks. One of the benefits is if you're in with the local government and if they see the benefit you're bringing, they can move stuff along. They're not getting bogged down in all the bureaucracy. They can they can make stuff happen.
Yeah.
So the model of each location being able to stand on its own feet as much as possible, having as much local leadership as possible. This is something that each location can operate and grow and provide that benefit and generate revenue, generate dollars. Once we have that core location up and running, the goal would be to breed some of the Iranian sheep that are in danger, and sheep from Turkmenistan, the Trans-Caspian Urial, the Armenian Mouflon, which is extinct in Georgia and almost extinct in the wild. So it's each one will kind of help facilitate and launch into future locations.
This episode of the Hunting Matters podcast is brought to you by B&B Taxidermy. Since 1983, the Baird family at B&B Taxidermy have been the premier experts in trophy mounts. Whether it's African, North American, global, or exotic, B&B Taxidermy will provide design, artistry, and attention to detail that you won't find anywhere else. B&B Taxidermy can also design and decorate your trophy room, showcase, or office with custom dioramas built to suit your space. Check out their showroom of exotic trophies on Jones Road in Houston, or visit their website at bbtaxidermy.com. B&B Taxidermy, proud supporters of the Hunting Matters podcast and Houston Safari Club Foundation. And then you have to go find the sheep herder's uncle that's the judge and get them.
That's right.
Well,
that's right. Yeah.
I mean, there's many tentacles to this.
There are. And so all of this is said with the greatest humility, understanding that the best tool we can bring, the best skill or trait that we can bring to this is that of a learner, and being ready to pivot and adapt to what's working and what's not working, because there's a lot that we hope and there's a lot we think and there's a lot of research and conversations, but until we're on the ground at each stage, we're going to learn as we go.
Yeah. And I'm guessing that you guys will have to overcome the false promises of the past, not specifically in your model, but, you know, when you've had people from other countries come in and then make these promises of, oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And, you know, next thing you know, they're out and they've got a wad of cash in their hands. I'm sure that's going to be an obstacle as well.
Yeah. Especially in parts of that region, without going into specifics, there's a lot of issues. There's corruption in some of those places, really, really bad corruption. There's the leftovers from the Soviet days that is still just permeating so many different aspects of the culture. So you're up against it in some cases, but there's also a lot of reasons to be hopeful.
Yeah. Well, you're definitely not a guy who's backing away from a challenge. I mean, you know, you're going into a part of the world that you're going to have to overcome a history of past, cultural differences, establish that level of trust, just to get buy-in, like you said, from all these different parties. So I applaud you guys that. What do you think your biggest challenges are for this? Is it cultural? Is it political? Is it logistics? Is it all of the above?
Well, I'll say the biggest risk is the political situation, because it's completely out of our hands.
Mm-hmm.
Having neighbors of Russia and Iran and Turkey on all three sides, you know, you just never know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And so that I think is manageable. I think there's a lot more stability there than there has ever been, but it's just out of your control to an extent. Now that to me, that doesn't mean we don't do it, because if we don't do it, these animals are gone. But we have to be clear-eyed and we have to have contingencies. And that's why we ultimately want to be in several countries, so that we can move these animals. You know, they're not going to get wiped out, because we can have them in different locations.
Yeah.
The logistics is crazy. It's a fun challenge, but it's a crazy challenge. So that's another big one.
The Houston Safari Club Foundation is a 501c3 nonprofit organization that supports the future of hunting and conservation. Wildlife and habitat conservation, youth education and outdoor experiences, scholarships, and anti-poaching efforts are just a few of the programs supported by this organization. monthly events, an annual convention, award-winning publications, networking opportunities, and valuable resources for hunting knowledge are just a few of the benefits of being a member of Houston Safari Club Foundation. If you're searching for a group of people dedicated to protecting the future of hunting, look no further. Join Houston Safari Club Foundation today at wehuntwegive.org or call 713-623-8844.
I can't imagine that part of the world, what that, I'm not going to say difficulties, because I mean, you guys obviously you're mission focused, and you're going to make it happen. It's just it's a lot. I mean, it's a lot for you guys to overcome, but it's good that you've already started to get the buy-in from some of the governments and agencies and that sort of thing. I love your tagline, "Make wild places wild again." It's very powerful. And I also like the fact that there's a tie in there. It's ecological, it's social, it's economic, it's conservation, and all those things. What is it that you can tell us about what you guys are doing that, not really an elevator speech, but they can kind of encapsulate, okay, let's pretend you're walking the floor of SHOT Show and you're pitching me on support. What is it that you're telling people that really is making them stand up and take notice and going, huh? I mean, I just in just the small time that we spent together, I'm very, very intrigued by this whole effort. But what is it that you're telling people? Do I hear a baby in the background, or is that a cat?
That would be a baby.
Okay.
Apologize.
No, it's fine. Look, I have got a granddaughter. I love kids. What's your hook? I mean, how are you getting people to stand up, take notice? Because you and I both know, if you've ever been to SHOT Show, it is a meat market fiasco. Everybody's walking around going, "I've got the greatest new outdoor television show in the world." People are always asking for money at these shows. What is it that's really grabbing people's attention?
There's a couple things. Having a team with credibility, and having people who are willing to stick their neck out there on your behalf and say, "Hey, you need to meet with these guys," has been instrumental. I mean, we had 35 meetings in 3.5 days between SHOT and Sheep. They were packed. But because we have a group that we're working with that really believes in this and has a lot of those relationships, we could at least get our foot in the door.
Right.
And then this idea of rewilding and being proactive. So we're proactive, we're hands-on. We are boots on the ground. It's a picture that really stirs people, because so much of it has just become, passive and protecting habitat, and it's harder to show the tangible effects of what you're doing.
Right.
And then the third piece is this financial sustainability. For a lot of people is a big deal for a lot of folks.
What does success look like for you in 20 years with this project? I'm not going to call it a project. It's a lifestyle. It's a commitment. It's so much more than a project. That undermines everything you guys are doing. But what does success look like for you in 20 years?
We measure success by things that we can measure. So it's not how many dollars we've raised or anything like that. The vision is we want to see robust wildlife populations thriving alongside the local people. We want to see them thriving together. So 20 years from now, I want to see, I couldn't give you an exact number, but I want to see growing herds, interconnected herds, where the small number of red deer in the middle of the country, there's a corridor where they're connected to the red deer up in the greater Caucasus Mountains. I want to see successful branches of this where there's a location running in Azerbaijan. And ultimately, it comes down to measurable results. We want to see more animals in the wild. We don't want to shut out the local people from their animals. There's a rich culture. There's thousands of years of history of young men as a rite of passage into manhood going up into the mountains and shooting a Caucasian tur. I don't want to shut them out from access to their own animals like has happened in other places. So I want to, again, maybe this is idealistic. I want to see a system similar to the United States where local people can go and hunt these animals, not just the wealthy.
Right. So as we wrap up today, the people who are watching and listening to this podcast, what is it that they can do to help? How can they support your efforts for Wild Giants?
Yeah, appreciate you asking that. This is we're right at the cusp. We've been on this roller coaster going up, 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 and it's just about to go over the top. We're getting ready to launch into the country, to build the breeding center, to start importing our first herds. So following what we're doing, following us on social media, going to our website, wildgiants.org, and signing up for our newsletter. But the biggest way that folks can get involved right now is by sharing what we're doing with their friends and by giving. Every dollar right now, $10, $100, whatever, makes a huge impact on our ability to launch this mission. So I would say that share what we're doing, follow along, and consider giving. And if you want to get in touch to learn more, please reach out. My email is tanner@wildgiants.org. Reach out, and I'd love to chat.
Awesome, man. You guys are doing great stuff. Tanner Tripp, the founder of Wild Giants Conservation Fund and Wild Giants Caucus. Just Caucasus. It's amazing, man. I can't wait to see you guys. I'm confident that you're going to succeed at it. I know you got a lot of work ahead of you, but we wish you the absolute best. So folks, don't forget, check them out at wildgiants.org. Tanner, thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It's been a blast. I love sharing about it.
Awesome. All right, folks, that wraps it up for this week. We'll see you next week on Hunting Matters, brought to you by the Houston Safari Club Foundation. Take care and have a great week. Hunting Matters is a Houston Safari Club Foundation production. Please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. For questions or more information, email us at info@wehuntwegive.org.